How can drug dependence affect your lifestyle? In the beginning, people use to have fun and for recreational use. That's generally how it starts for most people who are abusing or using drugs. It starts becoming abuse when a person starts using it on their own and no longer associated with others. They're now isolated. Instead of partying, they're using it perhaps as a crutch, as a way of coping with fatigue, ways to stay up so they can study longer hours, to become more sociable, for example, or to deal with pain. The opioids are a good example there, where people use it in the first place to treat physical pain, but another side effect that's well accepted is that it helps improve emotional pain too. So as a person starts to use more and more, and they use independently without any other people, this can help accelerate the spiral of the addiction itself. They are using more frequently. They could be using more dosing on their own. There could be side effects, things that it can affect their performance in school, their performance at work. It can cause lateness, unexcused absences. So this is generally how it happens, that a person starts off slow, but as they start using more and more, there will be consequences in their life. I would say most people, this is what happens. It's very few people out there that can moderate their use to the point where they can keep it under control to the point where it doesn't affect their lifestyle. For the most part, it's a safe general rule of thumb that people tend to use more and more. This is the nature of the beast, because most drugs of abuse have the ability for developing tolerance. So this is when a person needs needs more and more of the drug to achieve the same effect. To feel the high, they need more and more. And so as they feed themselves more and more of the drug of choice, this has a negative consequence, and this is going to result in dependency. So if they stop taking the drug of choice, they're going to go through withdrawal. They're now dependent or a slave to the drug of choice. This culminates in a lot of lifestyle changes. So not only will there be cycling use and cessation for them, like they could stop and then they would restart. As I said, there'd be effects on their lifestyle, but the general end point for most people is they end up isolating themselves. They end up losing their friendships, losing close companionships, relationships start breaking down, work has already started breaking down, or school's already started breaking down. They lose interest in things that they once enjoyed, things like recreation and entertainment. They just become a shadow of themselves. They might be present physically, but they're mentally absent. I think these are the best examples I can give of what happens during an escalating and spiraling addiction that falls out of control. Finally, in the end stages, it's quite clear what some drugs do over the lifestyle. A person becomes isolated, depending on the drug of choice. With crystal meth, we've also seen people young people who lose their teeth, for example, with meth mouth. That's one example there. The weight loss would be another. Complete irritability, loss of interest in just about everything but their drug of choice. With the opioids, they tend to lose a lot of weight, have very rough skin and leathery-like skin. They look gaunt, complete weight loss, and this can be also, another thing to point out is with the lifestyle changes, that when the person is cycling between use and abstinence, they're going to go from periods of joy and euphoria, feeling well and calm, and they're happy, their normal happy selves, and this would be followed quickly by, when they're withdrawing, by irritability. So you would see this moodiness developing in a person, and irritability. Those are telltale signs of a developing and worsening addiction. So to summarize, there are many different lifestyle changes that can occur with somebody who is going along the spectrum of substance abuse. And it can start off as a very subtle thing, but it can affect their performance. This can affect their relationships with other people. They tend to be isolated. And finally, there could be the physical syndrome of weight loss, psychological changes as well, like schizophrenia, for example. These are things that can occur further down the road. Is drug dependence a disability? That's more of a question, I think, from an insurance standpoint, but yes, it would be considered to be a disability because it is a form of a mental illness. As far as a disability from a physical standpoint, then I think it's a much harder thing to diagnose and try to discuss, but I think the simplest way is to say yes, it is a form of a disability because it is a mental illness. Is drug dependence a brain disease? Some people will call it a disease, particularly people who are in a 12-step program. But as a medical professional, I would say that it is a form of a mental illness. So when a person is dependent on the drug, i.e. they're going through withdrawal if they stop taking it, that is a very horrible situation to be in. My heart goes out to somebody like that. I know what it's like because I've been in it personally, and a person becomes very desperate in this situation. They'll go to any length to stop feeling unwell, to stop feeling the withdrawal. And they also don't care about the consequences of their actions. They might know better. They might realize that what they're doing is wrong, but they're feeling so sick from the withdrawal that they become desperate to do anything to feel well. So this explains why people will manipulate and lie to their family. They will take money. They will rob. Prostitution is an example. Medical doctors who abuse their privileges to prescribe any of the above are examples of what people do during the depth of their addiction to avoid the illness of withdrawal. And this is without doubt an illness. There's actually a physical illness involved here with withdrawal. There's definitely a psychological illness here that the person has had altered brain chemistry. So to summarize, yes, drug dependency is a form of mental illness. Some may call it a disease, but regardless, there are some serious changes going on in the person's brain and in their life that impairs their ability to deal with reality. What we are seeing in this person is no longer the person who we once knew as before they got into this dependency situation, and that it's the best way to approach these people is to not look at them as somebody who've lost morals and are bad people, but really these are sick people who need medical attention. Treat drug dependence. The easiest thing is to abstain and stop, but that is not likely to have an enduring recovery. The problem is a person can go through a withdrawal syndrome. With most drugs and alcohol, there is going to be some form of withdrawal where they feel very unwell, very sick, and all they want to do is feel better, and they know that the quickest way to feel better is to take more of their drug of choice. So over the long term, going cold turkey is not the best way. Instead, there's many other options out there. So for alcohol, speaking to your healthcare provider to get on a medication that helps ease the withdrawal syndrome. The same thing can be done with the opioids. There is opioid replacement therapy known as Suboxone. The older one is methadone. And these drugs help to minimize the harm being done. So instead of going cold turkey, which has low likelihood of enduring recovery, instead is to replace their drug of choice, the opioid drug of choice, with the opioid replacement therapy, i.e. Suboxone, which does not cause the high of the drug, and they can slowly wean off the Suboxone, and in this situation they can continue their normal daily activities. So the other option is rehab, and rehab is more for total abstinence, and I would recommend this as the first line of therapy. So abstaining on your own is not adequate. It's abstaining on your own and having lifestyle changes that I think is the most important thing, and this is where rehab comes in, because if as an inpatient rehab, we're buffered from the stresses of outside life and can focus on ourselves. I know this because of personal experience, being in rehab for over six months in total. So in this, I think it's a very healthy way to ensure complete abstinence, yet at the same time developing the skills necessary to ensure enduring abstinence. Things like being honest, being candid, sharing my feelings with others, listening better to others, practicing mindfulness, learning to meditate, learning how to deal with my stresses in life and to cope with them without relying on my crutch. Now those are the most important things that come in very handy to not only coping with recovering from my drug of choice, but it turns out that these same things are also helpful to enduring happiness. One thing I didn't add in there is being connected with other people. That's another positive thing about rehabs, as well as enjoyment of recreation and entertainment things in life, to have some balance. So To treat addiction and to have an enduring recovery depends on multiple factors. And to summarize, the way to treat it is not only to stop, but to ensure there's enduring abstinence, which is a tough thing to do, but this can be accomplished with replacement medications, whether it's ones for alcohol use or ones for opioids. Once a person gets stabilized on these, to slowly reduce the dose of these medications, but then also engage in an active program where they're involved and connected with other people. This can be done in rehab as an inpatient or an outpatient, but it's when a person is now learning the skills necessary to change the way they live their life, the way they look at life, and how to deal with stresses and to be able to have an enduring recovery.